Story 1. As a doctor, I've treated all types: law-abiding citizens, former criminals, and prisoners. They all receive the same treatment. I've had people with clean records be the most ill-mannered group, and I've seen prisoners be the most polite and thankful group. Story 2. Hello. Recently retired National Health Service critical care doctor here. I can only speak for the United Kingdom, but the best document I can direct you towards is Good Medical Practice. This is published by the General Medical Council. The main takeaways: a doctor's personal beliefs or moral objections must not compromise patient care. The General Medical Council states that doctors must ensure that their actions do not result in the delay or denial of necessary care to a patient. If a doctor has a moral or ethical objection to providing a particular treatment, e.g., abortion, contraception, gender-affirming care, they must not obstruct access to the service. Instead, they are required to inform the patient of their objection in a non-judgmental manner, arrange for the patient to see another qualified doctor or healthcare professional who can provide the service, refusing to treat a patient based on discriminatory beliefs, e.g., because of the patient's gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, or lifestyle, is strictly prohibited under the Equality Act 2010 and General Medical Council guidelines. A doctor cannot refuse treatment in an emergency, even if they object to the procedure on moral or ethical grounds. In such cases, the duty to preserve life and health takes precedence. Doctors are allowed to have conscientious objections to specific procedures, e.g., abortion, assisted reproduction, as permitted by United Kingdom law. For instance, under the Abortion Act 1967, doctors can object to participating in abortion procedures based on conscience, but they are still required to provide appropriate referrals. They cannot refuse to provide care in situations where the patient's life is at risk or in a medical emergency, regardless of their beliefs. To summarize, a doctor can refuse to treat a patient on moral or ethical grounds only if 1. The refusal does not endanger or delay necessary treatment. They ensure the patient can access alternative care. They remain respectful and non-discriminatory in their communication and actions. Failure to adhere to these guidelines may render you subject to fitness to practice proceedings. Of course, if you think your own life is in danger, or if you're incapacitated, e.g., drunk, you do not have to act. Patient safety does not come before your own safety, though I've lost count of the number of times I've accepted this. Hope that helps. Story 3. Part of me says, forget it. If they're truly a monster, the world would be a better place without them, so let them die. But I know it wouldn't stop there. The next thing you know, a doctor might refuse to treat someone they've deemed a bad person because they don't have the same religion or follow their holy book the exact same way they do. Or they deem them bad for some arbitrary reason that most people wouldn't even think about. So in reality, no, they have to treat everyone equally, or it would go to ruin in no time. Story 4. As a doctor, I treat every one of my patients with dignity and respect. I have a colleague who refuses to perform abortions on moral grounds but provides the patient with the contact information of doctors who will perform the procedure because he believes it is the patient's choice, and he respects that. Story 5. Yeah, we are not judges, executioners, or officers of the law. We are medical providers. We stop harm. I had an emergency room patient once with an ankle monitor. I made the mistake of searching for information about him. He was a pedophile. I still had to treat him. Did it affect my care? Possibly. Am I ever going to look up a patient's criminal history again? No. I do mathematics now, no patient care for me anymore. Story 6. Depends on the country and the scenario. In South India, we are allowed to refuse treatment for non-emergency cases if we work at a private practice. We are not legally allowed to turn away someone who presents with an emergency. Story 7. I quite like the way that this issue was discussed in the television show The West Wing, to be honest. For context, for those that haven't seen it, Bartlett is the United States president, and Abby is his wife, who is also a doctor. Abby. Samuel Mudd set Booth's leg after he shot Lincoln. Doctors are liable in this country if they don't treat the patient in front of them. Bartlett. Just for the record, this is why we don't talk about foreign policy, which we do, but you don't think we do enough. Abby. Why? Bartlett. Because Samuel Mudd was tried and convicted of treason for setting that leg. Abby. So? Bartlett. What so? Abby. So that's the way it goes. You set the leg. I really like the attitude of you do what medically needs to be done, everything else be damned that is shown there. Plus, Stockard Channing delivered the line brilliantly. Story 8. Speaking for the United States system here, doctors aren't generally required to see anyone, with the exception of emergency rooms, labor and delivery, and a few entities under the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act. It is perfectly reasonable for a doctor to decline to care for anyone they believe they won't be able to have an effective therapeutic relationship with. It would be unethical to treat a patient with whom a doctor does not believe they can have an effective relationship, whatever the reason. Story 9. How about this? How about we let a group of his peers who understand the pressures of the job but have some additional interest in improving the medical system weigh in? They could be those who have already demonstrated a high degree of proper and ethical conduct in their career and are interested in thinking about the skills future doctors might need. We could call it a board of doctors or a medical board, which is kind of catchy. I mean, I am just brainstorming here, though, but this idea seems like it has legs. Story 10. I'm just going to leave this right here. Story 11. Yes. When you become a doctor, you don't get to decide who you treat. I'm a social worker in a jail. I help people all day who have committed horrific crimes. I don't always love it, but that's part of the profession. Story 12. In the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis says that medical providers should be able to refuse service based on religious, ethical, or moral beliefs without having their licenses revoked. Story 13. In Japan, I was a heart surgeon #1 with a steady hand. One day, a Yakuza boss needed a new heart. I performed the operation, but there was a mistake, and the Yakuza boss died. The Yakuza were very mad. I hid in a fishing boat and came to America with no English, no food, and no money. Daryl gave me a job. Now I have a house, an American car, and a new woman. Daryl saved my life. My big secret. I killed the Yakuza boss on purpose. I am a good surgeon, the best. Story 14. Generally, doctors have the right to refuse treatment if they believe it is in the best interest of their practice or personal safety. But there are limits. Refusing care based on a patient's criminal history or perceived character can be seen as discriminatory and against medical ethics, which emphasize providing care to all patients regardless of their background. If a doctor refuses to treat someone solely based on their criminal history or personal judgment, it could be grounds for disciplinary action, including revocation of their license, especially if it results in harm to the patient or violates anti-discrimination laws. Ultimately, the decision would depend on the specific circumstances and the policies of the medical board or regulatory body overseeing the doctor's practice. Story 15. People have to trust doctors because they cure us and save our lives on a daily basis. It doesn't really matter who the patient is or any history they might have. Only the medical history should be important. Story 16. Should said doctor have their license revoked? Yes, without question. Those of us who work in medicine do it to take care of people. Medical ethics is emphasized strongly at all levels of care. The blunt answer is that if there's a demographic or type of person you don't want to treat, go find a new line of work. Story 17. You should not be allowed to have any biases if you work in healthcare. The same should be said for all public-focused careers. You are there to do your job, not judge who is worthy of your services. That law in Florida that allows people to deny treatment based on personal bias or religion is disgusting. Story 18. As someone who knows the law, yes, they should. As a citizen who has seen some awful people get to live, hell no, keep it and keep doing what they are doing too. Story 19. They should not be working in healthcare if this is an actual question. No one should be refused care, part of what is wrong with health insurance. Story 20. Yes. Even if Hitler were getting hanged the next day, he should be given medical treatment if needed. The worst criminals should be treated the same way. Enemy soldiers too. Why? Because we have a society. Punishment is the responsibility of all of us. It doesn't fall into the hands of one doctor, and it can't. They are separate things and should be. Story 21. Curious if the original poster has read The Manga Monster. Essentially, it is about a doctor who decides to save a child's life instead of a high society figure, which sounds like the right thing to do, yes? The child goes on to become a prolific serial killer and also influences many other people to do horrible things that affect a lot of people negatively. The doctor feels responsible and quits being a doctor to go on a journey to stop this person. Part of the question the manga asks is whether the doctor should feel responsible for the lives lost due to saving the life of a monster. Similar question here. Should the doctor be expected to help someone they think is going to then go on and hurt people? I'm not a doctor, and I can't answer this question. I think it's an extremely complex moral question with no black or white response. On one hand, it seems unfair for a doctor to have to be burdened with that kind of knowledge while already having to deal with such difficult work. On the other hand, if I were a doctor and was asked to help someone I knew had done bad things and was likely to go on and hurt other people, I would not want to help them. Maybe ignorance is bliss in these situations, and the doctor is only making their own job harder by trying to be a moral judge as well as a doctor. However, I don't think anyone can say it is right or wrong without being in that situation themselves. Story 22. Yes, they should. They are doctors, not judges. They need to follow their Hippocratic oath and let society and others more qualified deal with the rest. Story 23. Yes, they should absolutely have their licenses revoked. This is literally Dr. 101. Your job is to save all lives, not just the ones you like having around. Story 24. Yes, they've sworn an oath to take care of people, regardless of who or what they are. Part of being a doctor, police officer, or member of the military is understanding that regardless of how you feel about someone, you joined that specific career field to help people. If you can't follow that, you don't need to be doing that job. Story 25. Healthcare is a human right. No matter what bad things a person may have done, they still deserve access to healthcare because they are human. It is not up to the medical doctor to decide that someone is not deserving of this human right. A medical doctor may want to request that someone else treat the patient due to their personal feelings, but the patient must receive care. Story 26. Physician here. There is an important distinction between emergency care and elective care, and between legal, moral, and practical considerations. For emergency care, which I think this question mainly references, we are bound by the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act to provide emergency treatment and stabilization to everyone, period. Also, even if it were not the law, ethically, this is very important because in an emergency, there is no time to do anything else, and if you try to do something like let the murderer die, you might accidentally get it wrong. Elective care is a different story. Unless someone is in a protected category, I do not need to see them. There are lots of other doctors they can choose from. Ethically, you could make an argument that I should see everyone. From a practical standpoint, when I see a patient, I do not have any idea about their criminal record unless they were a famous criminal. Story 27. I guess it depends. What is the situation? Was it personal? Problems with self-control? An outright desire not to? How serious is the situation? I would not recommend going back to that doctor, and I think it is suitable to just move on because we do not know what might be going on. But still, I think it's too far to have their license revoked. Story 28. Honestly, maybe not revoked unless they are the only doctor available to treat the person, but they should be reprimanded in some fashion. There are reasons to not operate on a particular patient, such as conflict of interest because of family and whatnot. However, flat out refusing to offer care is out of line. Story 29. If you are a doctor, the only decision in practice should be what is the best scientifically proven treatment for the patient. Personal beliefs should not be involved. Story 30. Anyone in healthcare can tell you we provide healthcare to all people. Hell, half the time we are forced to provide healthcare to people who verbally and physically assault us. Story 31. Generally speaking, it's an ethical obligation to treat any and all patients without regard to their past, criminal or otherwise. We literally swear an oath to do that. There is an argument to be made that if a physician found out what the crime was and was so viscerally disgusted that they couldn't be objective anymore, they should hand off that care to another physician. Story 32. It is all in the Hippocratic Oath, and if we let doctors refuse treatment to criminals on moral grounds, this list can eventually include legitimately innocent people who just think or live in a way the doctor would not approve of. Think lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people, followers of a certain religion, political rivals, you get the idea. Story 33. This is in direct violation of the oath a doctor takes and all medical ethics. Yes, license revoked. Doctors literally save the lives of enemy combatants in war zones. They save the lives of prisoners who have committed horrific crimes. I've personally witnessed a black doctor treat a literal neo-Nazi who made his views extremely well known. It doesn't matter. You treat the patient. You don't judge them worthy or not. Story 34. I had a few prisoners come into my emergency room. They are serving their time and getting their punishments. It's not my job to make it worse. Just like it's not my job to call the police if I find drugs on someone. Medicine and law enforcement are not connected and shouldn't be, to better serve the community.